we're just going to, so I'm just going to share. I have a few slides that go through the program outline, if that's okay. And the idea is to probably spend, maybe 30 minutes, a bit less than that, on the slides, and then open it in about 45 minutes for taking the time to come along. Is that showing up now as a presentation on the shared screen?
Yep.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Marion. Yeah. I think Tara has covered that by way of the housekeeping. So I think most people are fairly used to the protocol online. From TUD, we have John Ryan and Alan Montgomery, who are here to answer any questions related to TUD. We've had a couple of questions about accreditation and the duration. And again, if anybody has any specific questions about this, we can talk about it towards the end, John and Alan. But the length of the course has been defined by the academic requirement, if you like, to have 72 hours across the 3 modules. So it's structured at the moment at 6.5 days. That's what most people seem to like. And yes, some people have come back and said, well, could we do it in 3 days, for example? Obviously, you can't do the same content in 3 days. But anyway, the length is defined by the academic requirements. So I suppose, flying through a couple of these slides, the problem that we're trying to solve in the service operations management space, and we'll talk a little bit as we move on about what's different about service operations management lean, if you like, is that, in the manufacturing sectors, which have dominated industry up to probably the 60s, where kind of productivity was growing at 3%. And if you look at the picture on the left, the traditional factory of old looks significantly, the modern factory looks significantly different than the old one. If you look at the one on the right, it's automated, computerized, robotics, et cetera, et cetera. If on the other hand, we look at the service sector of kind of the 1930s, typically the kind of typing pool scenario you have there, the modern shared services center often doesn't look any significantly different. And the stats kind of support that, in that the productivity to service sector is running at about 1/10 of the productivity of the manufacturing sector. But obviously nowadays the services sector is 70 or 80% of the economy. So it's a global challenge as to how do we significantly improve the productivity of service sector organizations. And for my sins, I signed up to kind of solve some of the underlying problems from that, way too many years ago, probably 40 years ago. So my background, and I've kind of co-designed the program with the TUD guys, is primarily as a practitioner. So I've been a frontline manager, senior manager, software developer, engineer, chief operations officer, you name it, over the last probably 30 or 40 years in a variety of large service and not so large service and complex organizations. And along the way, I've tried to supplement my knowledge with some academic qualifications. So I have an MBA, a master's in lean operational excellence, and a diploma in systems dynamics from MIT. And being the ultimate sucker, I've signed up for a doctorate in lean, which I'm kind of doing at the moment and hope to finish soon. So our organization Expertivity, we've been working for over 20 years, and we've accumulated about 40 organizations in the service and knowledge work sector that we've worked with, encompassing over 1,000 teams. And you'll see that the team concept is key to the program. We've been running a program like the TUD program for the best part of 15 years. And the outline of it is there. It's typically spread over about 4 months, has 5 milestones, very structured, and it's focused on helping the team leader and their team build their capabilities and their competences in service operations management, and then setting them up to be able to participate in lean. Now we'll kind of explain that a bit more, but I suppose a hypothesis that we would have is that many organizations and teams are what we call pre-lean. In other words, that lean anticipates a certain amount of core skills and competences to be in place. And often the reason that lean struggles is that those core competences are missing. So our fourth and fifth milestones in our traditional program kind of deal with how do you join up teams and the processes, and how do you apply lean. So this program, as hopefully you've seen already, consists of 3 modules. Module 1 is the focused on the team and the team leader. So how do they kind of build those competencies in the team? Module 2 then is for the team leader and the middle manager, or the team leader who aspires to be a middle manager. How do you coordinate multiple teams to improve end-to-end business processes? And the third module is kind of a more of a deep dive in the tool set that's required, particularly on the lean tool set. The kind of outputs, benefits, if you like, that teams have had over the last 17 or so years is, and there's some examples there from a variety of different organizations, that typically a team kind of runs, improves their productivity going through a program like this by between 15 and 50 odd %. And in fact, we've had situations where some teams have improved their productivity by 300%, i.e. they're getting through 3 times as much work with the same team as, or the same capabilities, same resources. And the program basically is a structured approach to building and putting in place the steps to be able to achieve that level of productivity improvement. Operations management, I find personally a kind of a strange word, in the sense that most people apply it to think about it in terms of manufacturing. We've tried kind of saying, well, operations is about execution, but I think our favorite kind of quote is, operations management, whether it be in the manufacturing sector, on the services sector, or knowledge work sector, is about bringing order to disorder. And the challenge in the services sector is that there's a slide up there kind of showing the different levels of complexity. In that bottom right-hand one, where you have simple and clear, most manufacturing organizations at this stage have managed to move their problems into the simple and the obvious, or at least the complicated, so you've got kind of complicated machines, complicated processes. Whoops, hit the wrong button there. Let's go back. Whereas most service organizations are in this kind of complex, and indeed some people would say in the kind of the chaos space. So the challenge really is for any team or manager is to kind of place themselves in the middle there and kind of look out into the environment in which they're working on, and trying to disaggregate, often the chaos that they see out there, and try and break them down into simple things that we can fix, complicated things that require expertise. So simple and obvious, for example, would be where you want to implement robotic process automation. It's a very clear problem. You want to put in some kind of rules base, and you fix it with maybe some RPA solutions. A complicated problem is where you need an expert. It's easy enough for the expert to understand, but you do require an expert. So, for example, giving access to the organization's network through a firewall requires a high degree of expertise, but the end solution is black or white. It either works or it doesn't work. So it's complicated, but an expert needs to be able to help resolve the problems and come up with the solution. And the complex one is the really challenging one. That's where everything is moving at the same time. So you kind of your project manager and your project management office. So there's different tools and different ways to come at the problems. But one of the first things to do is kind of look at what type of problem am I trying to solve. Like hearing a modern be micro to be and to look about that you can on later reasons for how people should perform or into develop that organization to achieve over the different modules. We'll touch now, and I think about on the next slide, about what's different about operations management and lean. Well, I think the first thing to our
Sorry, Alex, I don't know if it's just for me, but you're kind of freezing just a small bit. I don't know if other people are having that issue as well.
Yeah, little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so what I might do is just get everybody maybe just to turn off the cameras just for a minute, just to see if that maybe helps. But I'll let you know again if there's any issues, Alex, okay?
Thanks for that, Tara. What I might do actually is turn off my own camera just in case it's at this end. Yeah.
Perfect.
So you can still see the slides there, okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So as I was saying, operations management as a discipline has been around for a couple of hundred years, long before lean came along. So I suppose what we would see is that lean requires a certain fundamental set of capabilities that is kind of assumed in lean. So lean is an optimization approach. And when those skills are missing in the service sector, because service sectors, large-scale service sector work is a relatively new phenomenon, that's missing. And the service operations management program is designed to kind of fill that gap and put in those full foundations. And it also has lean as part of it, but on that basis that the foundations go in first. if we look at the, where does it fit in the scheme of things? The proposition, if you like, is, and what the course deals with is, because our teams are working in large complex organizations, the first thing they need is, excuse me, is some understanding of kind of systems thinking or joined up thinking, or, the complexity science that we touched on earlier. Service operations then kind of fits as that kind of core skill set that allows operational excellence, or lean operational excellence, wrap itself around that and embed itself in the organization. So in the absence of those lean operations service operations management skills, lean tends to have a very shallow foundation on which to develop and embed itself. And we would say is one of the main reasons that service organizations struggle with building and sustaining a lean thinking and a lean discipline organization. So what the program kind of introduces people to some of the bigger picture models to help understand how organizations work. So things like the business model canvas, the value proposition canvas, to be able to look at, what are the needs of customers and what are the things we need to do to fit together to be able to provide a solution. And one of the tools that we'll introduce is a thing called the Agile Business Execution Canvas. And what that looks like is this, and we won't go through it in detail, but if you take this right-hand pillar here, the right-hand pillar basically starts with, do we understand what our customer requirements are? And that's looking at both internal customers, the team that you're serving, your colleagues, and the external customers. So what is it that those teams need and those customers need to understand them, then to articulate them in a fashion that kind of makes sense. The purpose being then that when those requirements are articulated, they can then be designed for a solution. So one of the big challenges in the services sector is the tendency to go from, here's what we think we need, to actually let's go execute. And we skip out this design step. And then where probably the bulk of the program is built is in this operationalized column. So how do we operationalize that? But what we find, and the teams will see this, is that an awful lot of the problems that the team leader and the middle level manager face is the failure of these upstream issues. It's not clear what the requirements are. It hasn't been articulated in a fashion that makes sense to them. And the solutions haven't been designed such that they're easily executable. So the program really looks at, how does the team kind of get itself under control? What's the basic levers of control that a team leader needs to have in place? How do they focus on being effective, not just efficient? So how do they make sure that they're doing the right things all the time? How do they build in agility to deal with the volatile environment that they're working on, but at the same time, there's a difference between agility and chaos. So what tools can they bring to create the flexibility and the agility? To recognize that efficiency is a requirement. A lot of teams focus on, well, we need more resources to be effective. But the skill and discipline of a service operations management professional is to balance the efficiency and the effectiveness needs. To be able to contribute to what's required to automate the processes that can be, so a lot of teams will implement robotic process automation, but often it's without the insight from the frontline teams being able to help identify those tasks and move those tasks into automation. And then obviously we're living in a digital world, so how can they contribute to the digital strategy and the digitalization strategy of the organization? So that's where probably 80% of the program is focused on that pillar. And a good chunk of the balance is really around this learning and adapting. So monitoring their results to be able to see, well, did what we thought happened actually happen? A lot of people monitor results, so they have KPIs and they often jump straight to improve, but they miss the step about learning. So the purpose of monitoring is to learn what's different about what we expected. How does the team learn? How does it improve? What's the difference between adaptation and improving? So incremental improvement is possible, but often you need a strategic change in how the team is either structured or how the the process are structured. And then how can the frontline teams in particular come up with insights to be able to help the organization innovate? Because they're the people who are speaking to customers almost all the time. So it's within that kind of broader framework that the service operations management is focused primarily on these last two pillars here. So the mechanics of this arguably are fairly straightforward. If you take your average organization and you take your org chart, it has functions. Whatever they may be, a HR, a finance, a customer service, etc., like that. And all of those functions have teams. And each of those teams, if they build their own internal competencies and capabilities to be able to manage their own demand, their own capacity, resolve their local team issues, that's part of the building blocks, and that's pretty much what module 1 is focused on. How does each team build that capability? And then module 2 is looking at how do those teams join together to participate in end-to-end processes? And is there in your organization, for example, process ownership or process management? And if so, how does that work? Most organizations are pretty good at managing vertical relationships, but they struggle with how do we manage horizontal relationships, where we need to collaborate with other team members, but we don't report into their managers, etc. So some of the tools around teaming and relational coordination, the teams will practice. How does that work? And looking at end-to-end process metrics and how can they contribute to not just improving their local performance, but how do I improve the end-to-end performance of the business processes? We talked about systems thinking. So one of the big challenges that there is in service organizations is because it's not easy to see the link between cause and effect, because of the complex environment that people are working in. It can be full of great ideas and we just straight to go to it. So on the agile framework where we talked about, understanding a problem, maybe articulating it and jumping straight to execution, and we don't do the design piece. So one of the things that kind of comes up with working with teams in this space is that many of today's problems come from yesterday's solutions. And the reason for that is the organization is full of really good, bright, smart people who want to do their best. So they make those changes, they try to make those improvements, but in the absence of an ability to both have the technical skills to be able to work in a joined up thinking environment, and then obviously the process tools such as process maps and process diagrams, etc. Then the danger is that they locally optimize their own area and potentially make the process work. So they'll be brought through the whole thing of how do you understand the organization as a system, which we've talked about already earlier. How do they improve the interaction between the teams and functions across those end-to-end processes? Are there some tools that they might use to currently improve things? Because again, the focus will be on, not relying on a silver bullet solution, which is if only we had a better IT system, all of our problems would go away. So how can they iteratively improve what they have by improving their tool set, and then creating for that a spec which allows perhaps better automation, kind of going forward. This is a slide that's pretty much from the standard kind of lean tool set and the lean wheel of improvement, where you're looking at eliminating waste. And then on the left, then the standardization of work. As we say, what's missing in traditional lean, because it's come from the manufacturing sector, is this team by team ops management, which is pretty much always in place in a manufacturing environment, but is almost never in place in a service organization. So the service operations program is basically preparing the way for lean by putting in this team by team operations management capability, which then allows lean kind of accelerate and embed itself through the organization, and then become a standard way for how we do that. A big part of any operations management or lean program is cultivating the behaviors of high performance teams. So, creating this unity of purpose, how do they align their goals? Are there clear responsibilities understood, between and across the teams? Dealing with the challenging issue of how do individuals, ensure that they carry their own weight. So using data to empower people with information and insights, so that they can see their own performance and understand where that may not be where it is. Trust and respect and so on. So I won't go through all of those, but a big part of module 1 and module 2 is dealing with the behaviors of high performance teams and how they fit in with the science and the disciplines that support it. One of the big challenges in the service organizations is answering the proverbial question, how long will it take you to do that? And avoiding the answer is, well, how long is a piece of string? So I have a couple of slides there from the software agile estimation world. And they talk about the 10 deadly sins of estimation. So estimating, whether it's how long it is to develop a software product, how long does it take to answer an email, whatever it involves, a big part of operations management is arriving at a reliable estimate of how long something will take or how much effort something will take. And the first deadly sin of estimation is believing that good estimates are impossible. So in other words, if the team leaders don't believe that in this uncertain world, it's not possible to look at a bunch of emails and say, well, based on those 50 emails in my inbox, it should take me about 7 hours to do those. Then nobody's ever going to try and find out how could I arrive at a reliable estimate. So they'll be brought through practical examples of dealing with those situations in their own work, in their own environment, for their own tasks. And recognizing that estimation is a skill that has to be developed. So one of the big challenges in service and knowledge work organizations is that most estimates are created by subject matter experts. So in other words, trust me, I've been doing this for 20 years. It definitely takes an hour to do it. But unfortunately, subject matter experts tend to use very primitive estimation strategies. One of which is, I've been here for 20 years, so I know how long it takes. That's not really a very scientific basis for developing an estimate of work. They'll be introduced to the challenges and flaws of dealing with averages. One of the big banes of most people in the service sector is, on average, it'll take us 4 days to do it, but unfortunately tomorrow it's going to take us 10 days to do it, and next week it'll take us 1 day to do it, and the average over time might be 4 days. But the average really isn't very useful when you have a high volatile environment. And this notion of the tyranny of the average. So they'll be brought through tools to be able to cope with that variability, to arrive at better estimates of how long things take, to look at tools like the cone of uncertainty, which is, okay, you might start out with an estimate that is, plus or minus a couple of 100%, but there is a process by which that cone of uncertainty can be narrowed, such that by the time you come to plan your work on a Friday for next week, that you can be pretty accurate to plus or minus 5 or 10%. And that, for a lot of organizations, that they find challenging. They'll be introduced to what we kind of call an updated lexicon. So not talking about targets, but a powerful phrase I think that we like to use is a reasonable expectation. So being able to have a conversation with somebody that says, what's a reasonable expectation for you to finish that particular project, or what's a reasonable expectation for you to be able to answer those 50 emails, and recognize that involved in that reasonable expectation is a logical structure that will allow that to be broken down to understand, what is it, about that. And a variety of other terms that are there. To look at it very simply at the team managers level, particularly module 1, I mean, their challenge really is, how do they manage total demand? What's all the things that the team are asked to do? How long do those individual items take, and how many of them? And ultimately calculate that says, I have about 40 days worth of work in my queues, but I only have 10 people in my team. So how do I get through that 40 days worth of work, and then how many days worth of work is coming in each day? So if there's 10 people doing 10 days worth of work, then, you know, and I have 40 days worth of work, well, then arguably, you know, it's going to take me 40 days to work through it. But what happens if I'm getting in more than I'm actually getting through? What happens if 15 days worth of work is coming in, but we only have 10 days worth of work kind of going out? So getting them to build models that capture that information and how they deal with it. Again, because it's within a lean framework, recognizing that it's about value added and non-value added demand, and that it has to be aligned with delivering a service requirement. So how do they deal with this volatility that I have a relatively fixed capacity in my team? I could work a bit of overtime, but my demand volatility is pretty much all over the place. So how do I cope with that and do that? So the program looks at, you know, how do you do that? Capture the relevant data to be able to make that informed, deal with the issues of task time variability, look at the trends to be able to see, can we anticipate or remove some of that variability? And then the ultimate challenge, and I suppose the ultimate measure is what's my ability as a team and a team leader to be able to forecast the future with a reasonable degree of accuracy, and also have a chunk of things that we've identified that we can improve, all of which ultimately is focused around improving the customer needs. And as I say, once that's done at the team level, it becomes very easy. If every team has this level of capability, which is what the aspiration of the program is, it becomes very easy for those teams to collaborate in this end-to-end scenario. Now, often what organizations are missing is, you know, who owns the end-to-end process. And where organizations have been very successful is they have elevated the role of the mid-level manager to be the person who manages the collaboration across teams, and they spend less time micromanaging the team, and they spend more time collaborating across teams with their peers and with other team leaders to help improve the end-to-end process. So where that happens, it's really powerful. They'll be brought through then, you know, the standard lean things, you know, looking at a value stream map, not trying to solve world hunger in one go. So identify, you know, where's the big problem, take that problem, drill down, and follow the trouble as it goes on. They'll be introduced to visual management, the ability to be able to say, well, okay, let's take this, let's put something like this up on a wall. Let's capture where are the problems, have the team participate in those kind of conversations. They'll be introduced to tools like the priority decision matrix, which is, well, here's all of the things we could fix, but actually, what are they relevant to? What are the key goals and strategic objectives that we want to align those initiatives around? And how can we weight them such that the low-hanging fruit pops to the top? And we get some things started that are cheap to do, quick to do, but are actually high impact opportunities. They'll be introduced to the A3, which is a structured problem solving methodology for each of those. So as they pick these problems in their priority decision matrix, and they'll be brought through a couple of examples that in the program, they'll then take that into an A3, which is, as we say, a problem solving methodology, but also a great communication. For those who are not familiar, the A3 has its name from simply fitting on one A3 piece of paper. So the whole story and roadmap for improving that process fits on that kind of one page. And that's, and then look at, how do they standardize and embed the key learnings and changes that happen using some of the lean tools around standard work. So that's the overall of the program. The course timetable at the moment is basically looking at each Monday from Monday to 4th for a half day, 4 hours again being to meet the requirements of the TU certification program, followed by module 2, followed by module 3 in December. So module 1 and 2 would finish in December, and then module 3 would start again in January with 4-hour iterations, and as I say, focused on the teams dealing with their own particular problems, but obviously working within the context of the course framework. So that's that. We're not doing too badly, I think, on time. So I'd like to open that up if there's any questions that people would like to ask. I'll just stop sharing so that I can see who might be around. So is that clear? Does anybody want to comment on it, or?
I'll just give everyone just an opportunity. I have a couple of questions, Alex, that people have kind of sent to me, I suppose, that maybe others on the call might want addressed as well. But if anybody wants to ask any questions beforehand, feel free to do so, and I'll just wait for a minute and I can ask mine then.
I know one of the questions we've already kind of touched on, which we put on the thing, was that we ran this webinar about a week or 2 weeks ago. And one of the questions was, does it have to be three modules spread over 3 days each, or effectively, 18 half days? I think as we said, if that's a requirement for the certification. I think some customers have said we want to do a version of that. Not as long, and obviously that's possible, but that doesn't give the certification.
I see, Karen, had your mic unmuted? Were you about to ask a question?
Yeah, I was about to ask something about that, but another question that would come to mind is there an output for this? So is there a requirement to attend the course? Is there a project you work through your own data? So how do you get your, like, is there an exam at the end of it? How do you get your accreditation? Obviously you attend the course, but is there something that you'd have to do to?
Yeah, John, do you want to comment on that? You're on mute, eh, John?
Yeah, yeah. So it's 100% continuous assessment, Karen. So the way it will work is there won't be any requirement to sit a final terminal exam. So
perfect. Makes it attractive.
Yeah. Yeah, we're tending to go certainly for adult education and for continuing education, continuing development. Now we're starting to move away from, where at all possible, from terminal exams and moving more towards the more elements of continuous assessment.
Okay, so I suppose just I am working with, so Alex and Paul are working with us in our organization at the moment. So we're working through teams, right? So we're using a lot of this. So would you be proposing that you'd be asking people to bring their real data with them? So as regards these assignments, we ask them to actually be able to work through their own problems.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The viewpoint or the hope is that and that's why it's based like this wouldn't be offered to undergraduates or anything like that, is that people will be able to use real data and real problems from their own industry and their own particular sectors, and then apply what they're learning, and essentially then that project, that becomes your own project, which becomes part of what you're marked on.
Yeah, and you're paying back to the organization, then hopefully that might be supporting you.
Well, that's the whole selling point. That's what we hope is the selling point, is that, if they have to pay for you to do it, that the benefit is the knock on of the potential savings that they will get down the line from you obviously implementing a project that will improve operations.
Great.
Karen, you might be able to help the team, or the guys are on the call, because as you say, you and some of your own teams have been through, if you like, let's call it the in-course version, the in-house version. What's different, I suppose, is there's a lot of mentoring that goes with that program, the one that's in here. Like, this one is more, if you take that example you gave about the data, this one will be much more about as if people just attend the training courses, but they obviously don't get the kind of intensive mentoring that the guys in there have had. So, arguably an organization could do more teams, by going through the course. You could have 10 teams on a course and they go through it. On the other side of it, then you've kind of got the internal mentoring. So I don't know if you've any. I know you're considering on the Irish Life side of things of putting a number of the managers through the program.
Yeah.
Will that require, you think, probably that this could be the seeding of that capability, which then allows for your own program, your own operational excellence program to kind of follow on after?
Yeah. So I think, we're having these discussions obviously all the time. So it's the sustainability of all of this stuff, right? So I work in the IT part of the organization, so lots of training is happening all the time. So it's getting the benefits of that training and trying to use it and get the, getting people. And it is for, again, in our organization, Alex, as you know, operations management is an unusual practice, and terminology is not something that they like to just think that they come in every day and wave their magic wand and everything, just every day is different. So I think getting the methodologies and the basics as regards training is fantastic. And as you said, I definitely would be considering some of our management team managers on it, and probably more middle managers as well, because I think that, as you say, that's where probably there's gaps there that the more senior management don't appreciate and see the importance and the benefits of having good operations management skills within at their frontline manager teams. So, but I do think it would have to be supplemented by people within the organization to kind of continue to keep it going, because you can send people on training, but it's actually how do you get the benefits out of that and keep it working through and getting teams to continually improve. I think that's where something we would definitely be considering here, because no point in sending somebody in training and say, right, you got accreditation, it's good, but it's a fraction of what you need to do. Then it's right, really embedding that and reporting on it, but getting the awareness, definitely the first thing. And I think it would be great to send the guys and see what the benefits are, and then I think I'll have to be doing the hard work on the ground then to try and get that embedded in the organization.
And it might be
that
worth
probably
mentioning.
I hope answers the question that you asked.
No, it does. And I think for the other people, but also to just link it in with John Ryan on the TUD side of things, is one of the challenges that Karen has alluded to is people get training wherever it is, and then it kind of evaporates because it's so new to them. But Karen is exploring the option of their organization has a project management office, a PMO, which is not uncommon in most service organizations. But they're exploring the notion of setting up an OMO, an operations management office, where a small group of people are kind of developed to a high level of capability internally, and then they become the coaches and that. But it's kind of trying to replicate almost what you have in a manufacturing organization, which is who does the high level planning, the yearly planning, the annual planning, who drives the data, who feeds the information to the team such that they and then facilitate their weekly meetings around, well, how do we do this week and things like that, which is not a natural skill or practice that most service or operations management have. So there's some interest, and I think just on that, for having different people from different organizations go on the program, the opportunity is there to share insights across. So there's, I think we've pitched around 10 to 15 people on an individual course, that those people can share knowledge and insights to help each other learn and develop. So some interesting things there. Is anybody else, any other questions there? Orla or Andrea, you guys good? Yeah.
My question was this, related to that, is like system building around it. In terms of the training itself, is there a blended approach? Are there resources that our learners could use that potentially, I don't know, we could input in our LMS so they can go back to that content?
Yeah, well, the webinars will be recorded, so therefore, because we're looking at doing this virtually at the moment, so they will be recorded, so anybody who participates can have access to it, and then we ourselves have an LMS that we're building out, so we'd be happy to collaborate with yourself. We're happy to do that. If you have an internal learning management platform to take some of the content, share the slides with you, et cetera, et cetera. So very keen to work with anybody who's interested in doing that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alex, there was a couple of questions that I had received, I suppose, from a few different people, just in terms of the module sequence. So people were wondering, do the modules have to take place in that sequence, or do they have to do all 3 modules, or can they just take part in, let's say, module 2 if that's of interest?
No, they are standalone modules that are receive continuous education credits directly from TUD, and so people could do 1 module, 2 modules, or 3, or so that's there. The full certification, the level 7 certification, requires to do all 3, but the individual modules are accredited. Then after that, we have had some people saying, listen, we have lean coming out of our ears, so we know module 3 inside out, but we're really interested in module 1 and module 2 because we don't have these kind of core competences built in the team. So that's obviously perfectly feasible. It just means that they don't add up to the full requirement for the level certification thing, accreditation. But they individually are accredited by TUD. Yeah. The sequence, by the way, it depends on the audience. That for example, if you're putting your middle managers on the program, you could arguably start with module 2 if it was predominantly middle managers, and then do module 1. It partly depends. If it's an open course where there's 10 people from 10 different organizations, then I think we'd recommend, and from different skill sets, then we'd recommend you do the first one followed by the second one followed by the third one, because they're designed to build up that capability. If it's an in-house course where it's 10 people from the same organization, then arguably that can be moved around a little bit.
And just one more, just that I received as well, is do I suppose the team leaders or mid-level managers need to have any previous experience kind of in lean, or are there any kind of requirements that people would need, or is it really just to be a team leader in kind of the service and knowledge workspace?
Yeah, no, I think the course is designed for anybody from an entry-level team leader to an experienced team leader. I think the challenge is that and Karen might be interested in your comments on this. People who are new to becoming a team leader tend to find it easier to adapt to the program because they have less to unlearn, right? So where there are kind of new enthusiastic, people promoted in, they're keen to learn a new system, and it's fine. Where you have a team leader maybe or indeed a middle-level manager who's kind of been doing things the same way for the last 10 years, there can be a lot of feedback that kind of says, oh yeah, but that doesn't apply to this, that doesn't apply to that, and ultimately they do come around. But it's an interesting situation because most team leaders and mid-level managers get promoted. And now this is a generalism, but our experience over the years would be they get promoted because of their skill set in the discipline. So if you're an IT support engineer and you are particularly good at being an IT support engineer, you get promoted to be a team leader because it's seen as being a way of rewarding people. And similarly, the team leader gets rewarded and they get promoted to be a mid-level manager. The challenge is that most of that learning is done by apprenticeship. So you learn how to become a team leader by apprenticeship. Who are the other people? Who was the person here before me? And often the person before you was your mid-level manager who has been promoted out of that position. So you often have the perpetuation of whatever were historical practices, which are not necessarily good or best practices. We actually had because as I say, the program has been running for 15 or more years. About 10 years ago, a major bank in Ireland decided as a policy that they were no longer going to recruit team leaders or mid-level managers based on their ability to be from within the team. They actually deliberately picked them from across the team. So in other words, if you're an expert in, say, in banking and mortgages, and you were brought across to current account services or something, you didn't know anything about current account services. So you couldn't bring your prejudices about, well, I'm an expert on mortgages, so therefore I know how to manage mortgage teams. And because the data and the models, and in fact, there's technology to support this, there's products on the market that facilitate this. A person, when they're operationally minded and operationally trained, it actually doesn't make any difference whether you're dealing with processing mortgages, processing emails, processing loans, processing IT tasks in a project management office, because the mechanics of the thing are fundamentally the same. It's what are my tasks, how long do they take, and many of them are. What's the skills that are necessary to perform those tasks, and how do I balance the work such that the people with the right skills are doing the work, that they're doing them against something that's called a reasonable expectation. So therefore, you know what the predicted output should be. That you alleviate the problems of boredom by having, moving work around, but not moving it around such that people don't learn. So there's a bunch of things there that is a generic skill set that can then be applied to anywhere. So a well-trained team leader or middle manager can not only work in any team, but they're actually better working in other teams because they don't suffer with the prejudice of, well, I already know how all of this works, and therefore I don't need the information. You can't manage another team unless you know what are the tasks, what are the times, what are the skills, and the mechanics of that. So and they found it phenomenally beneficial. I mean, they got to a stage where they could forecast each month in advance to a 95% degree accuracy at the team level, because they had engineered out the variation. They had developed a high level of predictability in terms of their forecasting models. And to quote the person concerned, they said it was a bit like moving from a fire station to a Zen Buddhist monastery. Everything's kind of cool around here. Everything's kind of, we know where we're going, we know what we're going to do, such that when a variance happened, everybody kind of got together to say, geez, how did that happen? Because we're so predictable and so on. So for people who are managing the training and development, or indeed just managing, kind of the organizational, operational performance, there's some really interesting insights that come out of people that have been deploying a structured methodology to build these core competences. And it's just something that we identified a long time ago, that when we went to apply lean, they were missing them. So we put them in place. And then we discovered that if people put these in place first, everything else kind of fits into place, so. Andreas has had to go there. So I think that's probably about it, unless Orla, you okay? You've had all your questions answered, yeah? Okay, listen, thanks a million, guys. I really appreciate that. And we've recorded it, so Tara will put it up and send a link, okay?
Right.
Thanks a million,
Thanks a million, guys. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Fantastic.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.